No, I haven't. I never did call, but I had intentions to. I really did. I think I was going to call on the way out of town on Thursday, but forgot. So I appreciate the reminder. I'm not giving up on it. Just a lot of things going on. So, all right. Well, got the YouTube on just in the nick of time. Might take a few seconds here. What kind of small talk can we make? Windy yesterday, right? Windy Monday.
A lot of leaves came off.
A lot of leaves, yeah. Yeah. What else? Angels? Angels is an interesting topic. And I fully admit, like, this is an area that I'm glad that Pastor Peterson was willing to talk about it, because I generally just kind of don't go down that path, but it was a reminder that, oh, maybe it's time. Maybe, because I mean, you can't, when you come out of the seminary, you can't tackle every topic. And what I always kind of felt happened was that, like, in my childhood, it seems like angels were talked about a lot in the 1980s in church. And you had all sorts of angel figurines, and you know, there was a big deal. And so so it's almost like there was a huge supply of angelic talk, and then because of that, sometimes the demand and the supply affect each other, and so not a lot of demand for, I mean, I've never really been asked to talk about angels. So it was really cool that he wanted to do that, and he had been working on it. And then just also a trigger for me to be like, yeah, maybe I should spend some time, you know, kind of researching and studying angels as well. So any thoughts on angels? Angels are they're like heaven, you know what I mean? Like, we have our interpretation of what we think they're like, because we don't have a lot of details, do we? You know, and some of the details we have, like, they exist, like, we want something juicier than that. Like, we want to know, like, what kind of wardrobe they have, or, you know, those things that don't really matter, but the things that are interesting, the details that we find interesting. Do you agree with that statement, or, yeah?
I had an experience that I don't know if it was angels or what, but I went down to the community room on a cold winter night. It was snowing. I had to get the mail.
Yep.
And the walk hadn't been shoveled, and I fell down.
Okay.
And I couldn't get back up. And I crawled to my car, got a hold of the handle, and all of a sudden I was standing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, I know something helped, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so there's two directions you can go with it. You can say, well, adrenaline, you know, but you can also say, well, I also believe in angels. I believe that, you know, God could have helped me in that moment, you know, and maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's not for us to completely diagnose, you know, and figure out, like, because, like, how do you find out what really happened? Well, that's your experience, you know. And I find the same thing with those people that tell the story of being near death and seeing, you know, lights and seeing heaven. And on one side, it's like, you know, well, you know, when your body is, you know, nearing a state where it's almost dying, you can only imagine what, you know, your brain is doing as it thinks of, you know, if it's limited in a certain type of cell, immune system, you know, that sort of thing. Sometimes our brain, like when you get hit in the head and you see stars, like that's an effect of getting hit in the head hard. And so sometimes the effect of seeing stars isn't being hit in the head, but it's actually not drinking enough water, you know what I mean? So these sort of natural things happen, but then there's a reality that, maybe you did see something, but how do you prove it? How do you know? But then on the middle of it, kind of with angels, is the belief that, yeah, there's this thing called heaven, this afterlife, this light, and we've been rehearsing this for decades of our lives, thinking about this, and so it sort of unfolds in that way. And so, yeah. Anybody else? Angel talk. Not all at once. All right. So, we are looking at the tail end of a 3-chapter chiasm or focus, and it's a lot of what we read 2 weeks ago. And if it's, I always share this, how do you get your kids to do something they don't want to do? Yeah. Do you ask them once? You have to repeat it, right? Yeah, and it's not just our kids. Sometimes it's our spouses, right? I mean, and so I think this hits home that some things need to be repeated that are important, and I think in chapters 18 and 20 do that. They're emphasizing holy living. And last week, chapter 19 was kind of the middle of the filling. Was it last week that we had I am the Lord your God 13 times? Yeah. So, we hear I am Lord your God, and it's like, okay, it said that a bunch of times, and you just don't really register it. But think about hearing this for the first time. I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God. It's reassuring, right? Imagine you're at a difficult juncture, is that a word? You are at a difficult fork in the road, and junction, is juncture even a word? Juncture. It is? Okay. So you're at this juncture, and how wonderful it would be to hear those words. I am the Lord your God. I'm with you. I'm with you. I am Lord your God. I'm with you. I am the Lord your God. Emphasis on your. The word your actually takes on a whole new meaning. If you slow down long enough and think about your God, that just gives tremendous peace, doesn't it? So that was the filling. And so then we're kind of coming out of this in chapter 20. And in verse 1 it says, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, say to the people of Israel, any one of the people of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel who gives away any of his children to Molech shall surely be put to death. Did anyone do some Molech research? No? Molech is a false god. I imagine he's a Canaanite god. And so the belief was that you sacrifice your children in order to appease this god Molech. In fact, we got time. I'm going to do this. We're just going to do a quick search on Molech. Molech is an ancient deity associated with child sacrifice and worship in the ancient Near East, often linked to the sun god Baal. So we know Baal is how you see it, but B-A-A-L, Baal. The name itself is derived from a Hebrew term blending king with a word for shame used by the Israelites to mock pagan practices. Molech has also appeared in popular culture as a powerful demon, such as in the anime series, I can't even spell that, so that's more modern, but ancient deity. Molech is a deity in ancient Canaanite, so modern day Israel, Lebanon, Syria, an ancient Canaanite religion linked to practices of child sacrifice, and now, but kind of curious, why did they sacrifice to Molech. There's a lot of theories on Molech. There's a lot. It sounds like there's a lot of, they're not really sure. And I can't read all this in one section, or one segment. So, okay, we don't know, we can't summarize what the purpose of sacrificing to Molech, but I think we can back up and say Canaanite religion surrounds them. God is trying to establish a relationship with his people, saying, I am your God, you can trust me. I am your God, you don't need any other gods. You do not need to sacrifice to Molech. But also, God is telling the people of Israel, these children that are being sacrificed matter. Okay? They don't matter for that sacrifice. They matter for my promise and for my bringing into being. And so we capture a God, the God who values life. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And then this is interesting. Verse 3 says, I myself will set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given one of his children to Molech to make my sanctuary unclean and to profane my holy name. So I don't think we'll see this anywhere else in this chapter where Yahweh is basically saying, I will tackle this individual who does this. He is kind of saying, this is the one that disturbs me the most. Or maybe this is the one that you really need to work on, and I am putting my foot, in the sand to say, you cannot cross this line. Verse 4, and if the people of the land do at all close their eyes to that man when he gives one of his children to Molech, and do not put him to death, then I will set my face against the man and against his clan, and will cut them off from among their people, him and all who follow him in whoring after Molech. So this relationship with the false gods is related to prostitution and to whoring around in an inappropriate relationships, because God is ultimately trying to define and show what holiness looks like. So you might say what we've been reading the last two chapters is what holiness looks like for the people of Israel. Verse 6, if a person turns to mediums and necromancers, there it is again, whoring after them, I will set my face against that person and will cut him off from among his people. So what does it mean to be cut off? Cut off means disconnected. And it's somewhere, I read that it may mean like you don't even have a tombstone. Your remains aren't even known where they are. You are intentionally forgotten. I don't know exactly how far to go with this, but I think the severity is there. The importance of not doing this. So what are mediums and necromancers? To me, they are people that interpret the future, who look into, magic and the dark side in order to affect and give insight to the people. So ultimately, they're futurists who use satanic arts, or that's not the best, satanic means to interpret the future. And God is saying, amidst this, trust me. I will take care of you. You do not need, in a sense, it's like playing God if you're trying to figure these things out. And in a sense, it's also saying, I don't trust in you, Lord, that you will take care of my life. So, again, cut off from among his people. Then it says, consecrate yourselves. So make holy yourselves, therefore, and be holy for what? I am the Lord your God. And I like to say, trust me. Keep my statutes and do them. I am Yahweh, who sanctifies you. For anyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood is upon him. What do you think it means to curse father and mother here? What do you think? I don't think it leans in the direction of just being frustrated with them, right? I think it's more along the lines of wishing harm to your elders, your parents. Does that make sense? And I think that is not a part of the society or the human people, the people that God is calling to live a different way. But I think in some ways we read this and we can say, this all seems like no-brainer stuff for the most part. But we can also read it and say, this is what Canaanite culture was, okay? So I read it as though this is what they are not to do. And it seems like pretty, in some ways, easy. Like, I don't struggle with child sacrifice. You know, as I put myself into this text. But they obviously did. They obviously were surrounded by different things that made them believe that these things were worthy of doing. Did you ever try to convince somebody, one of your elders, maybe your grandparent or somebody else, to do something that they were not convinced would work? You know, and I think we all know what this, we are those old people, even me, you know, that, and sometimes we are right. Maybe oftentimes we are right. But sometimes our oftentimes we are right affects our sometimes we're not. Does that make sense? Like, I think what I'm trying to say is that changing behaviors for the Israelites and for Yahweh was not just, here's a new list of rules, follow them, and it was a piece of cake. But it actually is, when you've been doing something one way for so long, changing that is really hard. Think diets, right? Not so much not eating food, but like changing what you consume. Let's say you have a low sodium diet. You know how hard that is to find food that doesn't have sodium in it? Or finding a diet that doesn't have, fat in it, or it doesn't have carbs. You know what I mean? Like these sorts of things, and I'm not trying to say anything about any of these diets other than when we have attempted to change our eating behaviors, how easy is it?
We are stubborn.
We are stubborn, right, right. And so with this in mind, I think we can recognize who Yahweh is working with, who the Israelites are. I don't think they're any different than you and me in the sense of stubbornness. So, his blood is upon him. Verse 10. If a man commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. If a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And if a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed perversion. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. If a man takes a woman and her mother also, it is depravity. That's the polygamy move there. More than one wife. And really in all of this, for men, it's more than one wife when you're having adulterous affairs with another woman. This is in a sense, not that much different than polygamy. Same way, the other direction, women, lying with, another man. This is all kind of not really fun to converse about, even for me, but yet in the big picture, what is God establishing here? The family matters. And when you mess with it like you would in these extremes, you create really complicated situations, complicated family dynamics. And Yahweh's saying it's not just complicated, it's punishable. Are we on verse 15 or 14? 15. If a man lies with an animal, he shall surely be put to death, and you shall kill the animal. If a woman approaches any animal and lies with it, you shall kill the woman and the animal. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. So, this whole, almost 10 verses is based on sexual relations with other creatures and where there is a line. And ultimately, this would be a really, not a wonderful text to hear at a wedding, right? But yet, it is in the middle of these 10 verses is the importance of marriage, the institution of marriage. And these are all like the fences, the fence posts, or the barbed wire, or whatever you want to say, that surrounds in the middle the institution of marriage between a man and a woman, as that is holiness. And then we think about our brothers and sisters, the Roman Catholics, who would even call this a sacrament, right? Marriage in the eyes of the Roman Catholics is sacramental. It is holy, and I don't think we have to, necessarily agree, change how we look at it, but I think we can honor and actually say, to the point of emphasizing the holiness of it, that's not a bad move. I think the reason Lutherans avoided, or I think, Martin Luther and the Reformers avoided doing that is simply, I don't know, actually I should be careful what I say because I really don't know, but when it comes to sacraments as Lutherans, oftentimes it's bread, wine, and water. The sacraments are God coming in with and under created elements that are found everywhere. But then we also, as Lutherans, would say that absolution is also sacramental, that God is pronouncing forgiveness upon you. And the tangible means is not something you have placed upon you, water or ingest bread and wine, but it is the audible word of the pastor saying your sins are forgiven, as if Jesus was in the room physically telling you that at that moment. So, so this is kind of a reminder that these 10 verses are actually shaping not only the importance of community, but also the importance of monogamy, I would say, as well as the importance of marriage. Yeah. All right, where are we? Verse
17.
Thank you. If a man takes his sister, a daughter of his father, or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace. This is just, I think, a softer way of saying has sexual relations with one another. It is a disgrace. They shall be cut off from the sight of the children of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness, and he shall bear his iniquity. If a man lies with a woman during her menstrual period and uncovers her nakedness, he has made naked her fountain, and she has uncovered the fountain of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from among their people. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister or your father's sister, for that is to make naked one's relatives. That is to make naked one's relative, they shall bear their iniquity. And if a man lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. That's interesting. So in the uncovering of the nakedness with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered the nakedness of his uncle. So there you have like kind of the union that we believe happens in marriage, the union of husband and wife. And so when this happens, you're actually uncovering the nakedness of the uncle. They shall bear their sin, they shall die childless. That means they are not a part of the promise that was given to Abraham that you will have many descendants, okay? They shall die childless. It's not how we read it today. It's more along the lines that it's another way of saying you'll be cut off because you will not have a future. You won't have, you won't have descendants, okay? 21, if a man takes his brother's wife, it is impurity. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. So here's just a random question. As I read this, and I think as you read it, I think we're like, man, these don't seem that hard to follow. Would you agree? And anyone who disagrees probably doesn't want to say I disagree. And so maybe I acknowledge that, but I think we read this and say, because it's not an issue seemingly for any of us, how big of an issue was it for them? And because we don't see it being a big issue, do we actually incline ourselves to think that it didn't happen at all? Or very little? Or my random question is like, did this happen more than we're interpreting it to happen? So now that God has said this, like how many people were cut off now that Moses has reflected this to the people of Israel? Did everyone oblige and follow this? I mean, obviously not everyone did, but to what extent? Like, I'm curious. Because I think from my vantage point, I'm more inclined to say less than perhaps more. And ultimately, we don't know. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, from my vantage point, I think from our vantage point of saying, this is absolutely awful. I think this is no-brainer. This is stuff. It still happens today. We would say it's sinful. But it doesn't seem like it would. I think when we think of adultery today, it's a man or a woman lying with someone else other than their married partner, right? But all this other stuff gets really strange. Yeah, Mary?
But if God talked about it, wouldn't it seem like it must have been more people doing it?
That's kind of what I'm leaning towards, and I think ultimately we don't know, but I think I'm saying I have to be a little more open to the reality that this was maybe more prevalent than you and I want to actually imagine. You know what I mean? For a variety of reasons. And where does that leave us? Kind of in an uncomfortable spot. And the reason for me putting us in this, acknowledging this uncomfortable spot, is to also then acknowledge the comfort we have in the man in the picture over there. In the midst of this, there was still a problem, right? There's still a sin problem. And so like on one side we could say, yeah, follow these rules, that's what this is all about. But in the same space, we have to acknowledge that, yeah, I don't think these are issues that you and I struggle with for the most part, if at all. But they were a struggle, and there had to be some solution. That disc wasn't being cut off, because this still continued to be a problem. And God, let's just go back to Genesis, okay? Adam and Eve fall into sin. God says, I will send one that will crush the serpent's head. That's Jesus, okay? But Jesus doesn't happen until Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so from Genesis to Matthew, throughout the Old Testament, there's this thing happening. But in the way, by us slowing down reading Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus now, we're reminded that, God calls Abraham in a very slow way, has a vision for Abraham, his children to become parents to more children. They go to Egypt. Joseph saves the day. There's lots of drama there. Then Moses, 400 years. They're in the wilderness now. I mean, we're like 440 years from Abraham now, and they're in the wilderness. They've gotten all these details of how to build the tabernacle. And it's still, a number of centuries before the birth of Jesus. But yet there is a promise in Genesis about the man in the picture. We don't have a picture of him yet in Genesis. But we have this promise that God is making, and he comes. And he addresses the realities of the Old Testament, and he addresses the realities of the New Testament. And he addresses the realities of 2025 for you and me today. So, where are we? 22, that's what I thought. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and do them, that the land, there it is. Remember, when the land, that's the promise of Abraham 440 years ago. So these descendants have been living on that promise. Okay, when the land is mentioned, they're thinking Abraham, the promise, the tradition. They, at this point, they honor, they celebrate the Passover. They remember the Exodus. That the land where I'm bringing you to live may not vomit you out. In order for you to live here, you have to observe these statutes. Did they get vomited out ever? Sure did. I mean, that's kind of the Old Testament. That might be a nice way of saying, or maybe it's actually not a nice way of saying it, but ultimately, God uses outside forces to remove these descendants of Abraham from the land they promised. And why does God allow outside forces to remove them from the promised land? Why?
They didn't do what they were told.
They didn't do. They didn't live holy lives. They still fell trap to embracing the rituals of outside religions, but also the old Adam in them religions, right? The old Adam in them that says, well, God said this, but I'm probably the one that needs to fix this solution. You know what I mean? Like, I still can't believe that those descendants of Jacob are on the blackboard back there, and they've been up there for 2 years, and I still now can't erase them. And anyone who does, that'll actually be really funny when they do, because they just haven't been erased. But I look back there and I think about Jacob thinking he's marrying Rachel, and ends up with Leah. A week later, he marries Rachel. They both have servants. And so Jacob lies with all 4 of these women in order to, prosper. But then we have to go back to Abraham and Sarah being told, I will give you a son. And Abraham's like, after a while, was like, well, he must have meant I'm supposed to lie with Hagar. And so he lies with Hagar, and they have Ishmael. And God's like, no, idiot. I told you I would give you a son, and you're not trusting me. And so then they give him Isaac. You know what I mean? And Isaac had Jacob and Esau, and Jacob then is continuing this soap opera of a story of making sense of life. But to be fair, Isaac, Ishmael, Sarah, Hagar, Jacob, they don't have the Old Testament stories. They don't have the Sunday school stories. They don't even have the New Testament. They're figuring things out. And so it's easy for us to say, well, shoot, we know Jesus. We know what he has done for us. We know it's pretty clear why false deities is a bad idea. But it was not so clear to them, obviously. And that's the problem. So, verse 23, and you shall not walk in the customs of the nation that I am driving out before you. That means you shall not walk. One of my favorite psalms is Psalm number 1. And I just like the simplicity, but let me look it up quick for you. The simplicity of it, and it's not the first psalm written. It's actually a psalm to kind of prep it's like the song that encompasses all the other psalms. So when 150 of them are put together, Psalm 1 is said, this is the introductory psalm. It says, blessed is the person who does not follow. Okay, so what is follow? It's usually like when you're standing next to each other, you're not following, are you? You're standing. So following is kind of like when you're on the interstate or on the merging into traffic, you're moving with them in a direction that is the psalmist. So follow in the advice of wicked people. So blessed is the man the person who's not walking in the direction of the wicked. Follow the advice of wicked people. Take the path of sinners, or join the company of mockers. Okay, this is not actually my favorite translation of this, so I have to look this up. Bible Gateway. If you go to Bible Gateway, you can find every translation of the Greek and the Hebrew. And sometimes having every translation is actually overwhelming. So, okay, blessed is the man, human, person, as this wants to make sure everyone knows it's not just men. Okay, so blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, who doesn't walk and then nor stands. Okay, when you stand, you're like, ooh, we should talk more. So blessed is the man who does not stand in the way of sinners. And then if you sit down with this person, you're even more inclined to be like, hey, let's grab coffee together, and you can tell me more about this stuff that my Lord doesn't want me to talk about. So blessed is the man who does not walk, stand, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And I believe a better translation of the law is instruction. The direction, the teachings of the Lord. Blessed is the man when his delight is in the instruction, the teaching of the Lord. And on this instruction, he meditates both day and night. He thinks about this. He's like a tree planted by streams of water. Okay, we live in Minnesota. A tree by a stream of water is a dime a dozen, right? Not so here. What is something that is not in Minnesota? Arizona is not in Minnesota. Blessed is the man who his delight is in the instruction of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a person who leaves Minnesota to enjoy Arizona in October. It's a positive thing. I'm not trying to knock Arizona or Minnesota. I'm just trying to say, like when people go south, we're happy for them. We also don't want to hear about it when you come back. Unless I ask. As long as I'm in the driver's seat, Lynn, we can handle it. And we all know this, right? Lynn, you know that you just don't, you tell Jim, you rub it in with him, but you know, like, not everyone wants to hear about how wonderful this was. But it was wonderful, you know? And so he is like a tree planted by streams of water. Streams of water means I don't have to search for water. You know, water is so essential. That in the tree isn't just an oak tree that drops its leaves and acorns or walnuts, like in my yard, but it is a tree that yields fruit in its season. And its leaf does not wither. Okay? In all that he does, he prospers. So basically, living in the instructions, the statutes as we read about in Leviticus, following these instructions of the Lord means your life will be taken care of. You'll be like a tree that bears fruit by a stream of water. You will not wither. You will prosper. All right? So, you shall not walk in the customs of the nations that I'm driving out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I detested them. But I have said to you, and this is kind of the last hurrah of the last 3 chapters, but I have said to you, you shall inherit their land. Okay, this is the promise to Abraham, and for 440 years at least, you will inherit the promised land, and I will give it to you to possess a land flowing with milk and honey. How many of you are like fascinated by milk and honey, or does that just sound like a messy table? Like, I think I don't really like honey unless it's in something like bread. Then I like honey, but I just don't like honey. But I like honey on stuff. I don't know if it's because it's always like stuck to the table and I have to wipe it up. It's hard to deal with. And then milk, milk is good. I mean, as long as it's cold. I don't like warm milk, and this is warm milk. This is not refrigerated milk. So I don't have this great view of milk and honey. But milk and honey is the best meal you can think of day after day. It's Thanksgiving dinner every day that you never get sick of. That's what it's communicating. Milk was a source of protein when you didn't have beef herds and pork herds, or pork, pig, what? Herds, okay. And you didn't have chicken coops. You didn't necessarily butcher everything unless you were going to eat it. They obviously do. So milk was this tremendous source of well-being. Every milk enthused person knows that it's full of calcium. And the marketing of milk over the decades has made this clear. It's essential. In fact, they've made it so essential that every school, what do they serve? Milk, right? And we debate whether skim or 2% is there really that much of a difference? Is it necessary? And we can get into fights over this, but we won't do that now. But milk in a barren land is like gold, a wonderful meal. And honey, that's the source of sweetness. You don't have Jolly Ranchers, you don't have hot tamales, whatever your candy of choice is, they don't exist. Sweetness is simply honey. And what does sugar do to the brain? Makes the brain happy, doesn't it? Dopamine literally drips when you get to taste sugar. Sugar's more addictive than cocaine. You ever heard that? Yeah, we love our sugar. Anybody that's ever had to do the sugar-free diet? Oh, that's brutal. Yeah. So this land flowing, not just like occasionally bursting with milk and honey, but flowing like fire hose, not not dripping with milk and honey, but flowing with milk and honey. This will be yours if you follow in my statutes. We'll say it again. I am Yahweh, your God, who has separated you from the peoples. What does that mean, separated you? See, I think we can interpret this 2 ways. And I think the way Israel often may be interpreted is that as God provided, goodness and milk and honey to them, they began to think that their whole role is to keep this to themselves. But the reality is that God has a plan to use Israel to be a light to the other nations. A way of understanding this creation that God is behind. That one day maybe the Canaanites will say to one another, this Moloch thing is kind of dumb. In fact, it's not dumb, it's brutal. It's awful. And in some ways, we live in that reality. Child sacrifice is not an issue that it was. You could actually unpack it and say, okay, I don't think children are being sacrificed in the United States, we'll say, even in the world. But we might say, I can believe it still happens in some parts, and it's not a good thing. But then we can also say, how children are treated and cared for and loved. And how well is that being done? That's not exactly what this is saying, but I think by understanding that God upholds children and does not want them to be sacrificed anymore, it means that children matter very much. You shall not make for yourselves, verse 25. You shall therefore separate the clean beast from the unclean bird from the clean. You shall not make for yourself detestable by beast or by bird or by anything which the ground crawls, which I have set apart for you to hold unclean. But you shall be holy to me. For again, I am Yahweh. I am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. A man or a woman who is a medium or a necromancer shall surely be put to death. They shall be stoned with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. What an awful way to end this, right? But I think what is going on here is part the chiasm of this chapter, the chiasm of the 3 chapters, but also the emphasis is that I am the only God you need. And I'm not just suggesting that, I'm enforcing that. And I've told you in the last 3 chapters, this is how you will live. This is what living in relationship with me, this is what you signed up for. I'm giving you further details. This is what you want. And when you follow this, this is what will happen. A land flowing with milk and honey. Children, descendants. God will take care of you. All right. So that brings us to the end of chapter 20. Any insights from you guys? Anything you want to talk about?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
What we were talking about earlier. Back in 1970, when I was in the Army, Louisville, Alabama, up in the mountains. And it pretty much, it was their own world. There was no law enforcement up there.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff went on.
Yeah. It was eye-opening, wasn't it? You said it in Alabama? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did we think, our perception of the United States, we know that Minnesota is different than New York and California and Texas and Arizona. We know how they're different. But we sometimes are limited in our understanding to recognize, and we don't often want to recognize. We kind of want to live in denial. But in my visits to West Virginia, it became a little more clear to me how some of this stuff could happen. And so and this isn't a knock on West Virginia to say, we are a far superior state. I don't think that is the case at all. Because I think they might come here and say, it's blatantly obvious to us, like, who your idols are. You know what I mean? We don't see it. See, an idol, the best description of an idol, well, the idol is right there on our heads. What does that mean? The idol is not here, but here. What does that mean? If the idol's here, what changes when it goes here? You don't see it. That is an idol. The idols are the things we can't see. And I'm just I'm riffing off of what you've brought up and bringing it up about my experience in West Virginia. They had the Church of the Snake Handling. We didn't get to go to that one, but we went to a deep South Pentecostal church and listened to a sermon that would make all of you really uncomfortable if I did it. I don't think you would leave. I think you would laugh for a while because I think we've established enough trust, that I was up to something and I would use it as a teachable moment. But it was a very different service. And the way the guy preached was very, very different, okay? But then, a case in point, I'll never forget talking to somebody. We were working with somebody's home, and I remember talking to the person, and my small talk usually is, well, where are you from? And they're like, from here. Where you been is the next question in many, various ways. Like, that's my way of, interacting with people, figuring out, what you're all about. And I will never forget, now that I tell the story, I think it was probably a gal my age or a little older. I was like, where have you been? And she had been to the town down at the end of the road. We'll say she was from outside Long Prairie. She had been to Long Prairie. She had never been to Alexandria. She had never been to St. Cloud. She had never been to Brainerd. She had never left the county, and she was 40-something. How is that even possible? Literally, how is that even possible? The ambulance takes you out of Todd County, right? This is the case. And so if that becomes the case, so also come traditions within that society. It was a coal mining society. That means that they had fell on hard times, right? Coal mining didn't pay what it used to, and coal mining was brutal to workers, as a trade, we'll put it. But then up these hollers, up these roads, there was families that lived in these areas. Your neighbors weren't necessarily people that moved to town. Your neighbors oftentimes were your relatives. And so thinking about what we've just read, it actually might, and I don't want to do this to people of West Virginia at all, any different than anywhere else. But I think environmentally speaking, by going there in those areas where people don't come and go as often, we can maybe see how there could be more room for potential problems, familial problems, right? And so, you talking about another state, we do that, but we also have to recognize that in our own situations, in our own places, I don't think we would say we got it all figured out here in our families and in our state. You know what I mean? And that's the difficulty of it. So thanks for that comment. Did I cover all the bases, or did you have any more to say?
Yeah, just that he said a lot of the families there, the kids all were from the same father.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just backwards environment. And
Yeah.
The environment that was huge.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and then that bad tradition carries on, right? It's sometimes the victim becomes the.
Yeah, a lot of people got shot.
Oh, yeah.
Because of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There was no law, they just buried them.
And the hard thing too is so the murder of neighbor, and what's more important, sugarcoating everything, or in the middle not talking about it, or being really uncomfortable and acknowledging it. And I think as we've retold the history, I think we prefer not talking about it or sugarcoating it. Because you can't really explain or do anything when you just kind of let the raw reality sit. And I think that's where I kind of wanted that text to sit with us. Like, the raw reality is that this literally must have been a problem, right? And so, bringing it back to our world, I imagine in 60 or 50 years since you were down there, I doubt everything's been resolved. And other problems have come about. And so this leads us to a continued need for an outside director of hope. And that comes from Yahweh, who spoke to these people. So Yahweh the Lord, who's saying, like, this is another fun way to think about it. I, the Lord, am your God. What's he say? I, the Lord, I am the Lord your God. There it is. I am the Lord your God. That guy, I can't even say guy, God, who says that right here, is the God you and I worship. How fascinating is that? Our God spoke these words in Leviticus, and he continues to speak to us through his word and through his church. And in the midst of that, in the middle of those two realities, comes the man depicted in the picture on the wall, Jesus Christ, the man who's speaking. The enfleshed Son of God comes into this world to bring hope amidst the realities of whatever state we've experienced that shook our perception of what is humanity out there. And I guarantee you, if we went to other places outside the United States, we would find even more tragic realities that the media doesn't want to give to us. You see, the media knows we can only handle so much. The whole goal of media is to sell us a product. And they know what we respond to, right? But that stuff that is just vile and awful and really doesn't affect us, it doesn't sell. And so it's hard to find that reality. You have to find other sources. It's not on your mainstream medias. But the crap that looks like Leviticus 20:10-20, that actually happens, it's found as a reality in places that are not covered by most of our media outlets. And I'm not trying to knock the media outlets, except acknowledge that they're selling you a product, they sell me a product, day in and day out. And sometimes we have to be smarter than that, and we have to recognize this other stuff happens, and it's uncomfortable. And we don't have to just live there in that uncomfortableness, but we cannot live in what would be over here, sugarcoating it. Oh, it's not that bad. Or in the middle of it, which is just pretend it doesn't happen. Because if we pretend it doesn't happen, when we find out it happens, we live in denial. Like, that can't happen. No way. I won't believe it. And if we sugarcoat it, it's like, well, it's really not that bad. But if we live with the reality of what it is, we turn to God for mercy, for hope, for direction, for peace, and he gives it to you in Jesus Christ. Any other comments? All right, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you again this day for speaking to us through your word. Help us to navigate some really difficult books and chapters of your scriptures. Help us to make sense of reality, but continue to help us make sense of your mercy and love for humanity. Help us then carry on that view as we live amidst humanity. Help us to see our neighbor lovingly, mercifully. Help us see the importance of order and justice for all. Lord, in the midst of the injustices of this world, we thank you for your Son Jesus, who justifies us. Undeserving we are, based on our own idols, our own idolatry, our own sin. He has forgiven those by his death on the cross. And we want to change, and we want to live, and we want to be cognizant. And we recognize there's no way we had a chance at surviving and being a part of your kingdom. But in your great love and mercy towards us, you made us a part of your family, a part of your inheritance, a part of your kingdom, a part of your promise. We give thanks to you. In your name we pray. Amen.